So today we're going to talk about using forms and quizzes. We're going to look at grading, and we're also going to look at I've given like content areas, especially some of the math, CTE, STEM, and then music. I dropped in some supplemental resources for you there. Couple other things. Yesterday there was the question about, can you edit a PDF? Or, what can you do on a PDF on an iPad in the Google app? Who gets excited when they see this? Anybody? This is a PDF. It's a straight PDF. It's been edited and turned in. Nobody gets excited? So the cool thing is we can edit on and when you look it up, it says on mobile, and so an iPad tends to fall. Sometimes it's mobile, sometimes it's not. I know I tested it previously and it wasn't working, but it does work on an iPad now to annotate and edit a PDF. And so for the students that have iPads, and what grades have iPads for you guys? And you can drop that in the chat or you can unmute. Okay, so BK2. So those students that have iPads will be able to edit it when they open. So you can take a straight PDF and add it to the assignment. And so I made an assignment for myself just to see, because I was testing it out. So I just assigned it to me, so you guys don't have to deal with it. I just attached a PDF to the assignment. So this is a PDF that we looked at yesterday that we converted. And when I went into my iPad, so I go into the Google Classroom app on the iPad, there's a little pencil in the upper right-hand corner. So does anybody do you want me to assign you this just so you can see if you have the iPad, if you can make it work? It'll also work on mobile devices, and so it does work like on your phone if you have Google Classroom on your phone. Or you can assign yourself a PDF if you want and play around with it. You're gonna watch, okay, that's fine. All right, so anyways, I can't really show you because it's, well, yeah, we're not gonna go down this road. But yeah, so you can edit a PDF on an iPad. So for your BK2, that's gonna be awesome. You're going to not have to worry about, you'll be able to use your PDFs a lot more easily. But on the computer you still have to use one of the other methods we talked about yesterday. All right, so I dropped a number of resources in for various groups. And so math, STEM, music, and then for the working with the littles and Google Classroom, there's a couple of resources. There's an author who's written a book about using Google Classroom with Early L, and so I've linked a couple of her resources there to explore. So that is all for you guys as resources, and I'll give you some time to explore those today as we're kind of rolling through. But really where I wanted to kick off today is we have quizzes and forms is something that we haven't done a ton of yet. I love that people have already dropped forms in, so that's awesome. So tell me who's using forms already. Go ahead and either unmute or drop it in the chat. Oh, nice. For basketball awards. Oh, cool. So did you use it for nominations or for voting or both? Okay, nice. And that's a great way. Have not used Forms yet. Okay. Okay, yes. Quizzes and tests and final last for last quarter dealing with vocabulary. Easy multiple choice. So did you use the do you use the quiz and so it auto graded for you? Yes. I love that. Yes, the quiz is the best. It's a fast return for the kids, and it's also very organized for you. And so it is, and you can really do some. I mean, you can start out really simple, and then you can really add and make. I don't want to say elaborate, but add a lot of detail and make them useful. All right, so everybody should have the Google Forms and Quizzes assignment, and I've already got 3 turned in. And so for those of you that have used Google Forms, this is definitely, I'm going to talk hopefully about some things that you don't know because I'm always learning things about Google Forms. But otherwise, I did attach a couple of new resources in here for you to explore. And so if you've used Google Forms and Quizzes, you can go ahead and kind of skip down. The 25 practical uses is huge. That is a really great resource for for Google Forms. And so I encourage you all to explore it, but if you're familiar with forms, that's something you can hang out with right now while we're looking at forms. So what we're going to do with Google Quizzes and Forms is I will run through a little, kind of highlights of what you can do. Is there anything you want to do with forms that you've not been able to figure out? Drop that in the chat. And so I will continue going through and we will do a demo of forms. Knowing that you have tutorials the first day of Google Forms to support you. And then one of the things you can use quizzes and forms in Google Classroom, and we'll look at when you add a form, what that can look like. And so your assignment for this one is to practice creating a Google form or quiz, and then you're going to send it, which is how you get the link to copy it, and paste it in the class comments for this assignment. You don't need to attach anything to the assignment, just mark as done when you're finished. So let's dive into creating a quiz in Google Classroom or in Google. We are not going to necessarily create it straight in Google Classroom. So I'm going to pop over to my Google Drive. So I'm going to pop over to my Google Drive and I'm going to click on New. And then I have More, and then I see Forms. The other way I can get there is my waffle. And I can go to Forms and get there that way too. What's nice is they do give us a handful of templates that when you go into Forms, there are just a few templates, and so you don't have to recreate the wheel. You can go in and just grab an exit ticket and call it good, and then you don't need to do anything other than edit it for your class. So I do like using, when you go into Forms, you do have the templates across the top, which are nice. I'm going to start with a blank one. And we're going to look across the top. You see we have questions and then we have responses, and responses is where any answers will go. You'll also notice that we have a couple of controls here. One is the create a spreadsheet. I often create a spreadsheet for my responses because then I end up with a spreadsheet that I can sort or use however I need to. And so but you don't have to create a spreadsheet. You'll also have the 3 dots. You can get email notifications for new responses. And so if you're using a spreadsheet for something that's, pretty random, and people or a form for something that's pretty random, I use Google Forms for people to sign up to get signed up for the Ty Reads account. And so this isn't something that happens every day. I don't need to check it every day. I get a notification that comes in when somebody fills it in, and then I can just go create the accounts. And so that is nice if you have something that you just want to have like people need to request something, you don't have to come back and look at it every day. At the top of the page still we have, you can customize it. Here again we can add our own image, we can pick our colors. Preview is awesome because it gives you a preview that you can actually run through. And so I generally do test my quizzes just to make sure that they work and that they're doing everything I want them to. The next one over is the gear with our settings. And when we're hanging out in settings, you're going to want to just think about a couple of things. First off, in the General tab, that collect email addresses, you will want to gather names and email addresses when you do quizzes. If you don't, what will happen is you'll end up with quizzes that you don't know whose they are, and while it's entertaining, it isn't useful. And so unless you want something to be totally anonymous, I normally just collect email addresses because it also gives me the opportunity to do response receipts. And so response receipts are a respondent will get a copy of their responses to their email if they either request it or always. And so I do like to use response receipts for many things when I'm submitting them, just so that, it's like I have it in my email and so I know I submitted it. This you can restrict your users to the state of South Dakota. And so, if your students are all in Google Classroom, this is not going to be a big deal. Where it does turn into a bigger deal is when we start working with people that are outside of the K-12 domain. And so if you have, you're sending this out to parents, if you're, doing something with the community, you will want to make sure that this is unchecked so that anybody can do it. And the limit to one response is obviously it limits it to one response. I generally do not. The edit after submit, I don't generally turn that on, nor do I allow people to see the summary charts and text responses. But I mean, obviously, depending on if you're doing, some sort of a quick, survey and you want people to see, after they submit it, what, who's ahead, you can do that. It will be anonymous. It would not say that so-and-so responded this. It would just be a summary. All right, progress. When we look at progress, you can see show progress bar. You can shuffle question order. This is fine unless you're using logic, and then you can't do it. And then also if you can show the link to submit another response. You can also put in a confirmation message, and so, thanks for your work, or, whatever, and people will know, that will pop up when they've submitted it. And then the last box is the quizzes option. So this will add point values to questions and allow auto grading. And so this is what Carolyn did with her quizzes. And so you have this option. You do have a locked mode on Chromebooks. So this is an option for Chromebooks. You can also control when you release a grade. And so you can do it either immediately after each submission or later after manual review. And if you do later, you'll notice it turns on email collection, which we're already doing anyways. And then you can set what the students can see. And so if you say missed questions, they'll be able to see what questions they answered incorrectly. If they say correct, they'll see the correct answer for each question. And so if you did want them to go back and take it again, you maybe wouldn't want to show them the correct answer. And then point values, you can show them point values or not for each question. So I'm going to click on save, and so that is our settings. The next icon over is the send, and that is how we share our form. In this situation, we can also just add it to Google Classroom. But if you're going to send something out to parents, or you're sending something out to a group that's not in Google Classroom, you can copy the link. You can either email it out directly, or you can embed it if you have a website that you want to embed it in. You also have the ability to share it out with Facebook and Twitter. And then 3 more dots. How fun is that? With our 3 dots here, we can do, this is where we can copy it. And so I do this a lot. I copy, a form, and I make a form and then I end up copying it for something else. And you don't end up losing, you don't get any of the responses. You end up with a blank form with all your questions that you can edit. I can add in collaborators if I would like. And so if I'm working with somebody on this, I can bring them in as a collaborator. Know that your collaborators can edit and delete just like you can. Okay, so let's go back to our questions and look at all of our options. So we're asking to collect email, and so that's great because at this point, that is something that I tend to use often. Now we have our first question. You have the option to do a whole bunch of different things. And so obviously if I do short answer or paragraph, short answer, I can put in correct answers. I can list out correct answers. One of the struggles with this is then spelling starts to matter. If it's if we're looking at George Washington, if somebody just puts down Washington as the that, so you may want to come back and also review these later to grade them. You could also do paragraph. Then we have multiple choice. Checkbox is something that is select as many. And so this is one where you could say select all that are correct if you do a checkbox. Drop down, it just gives you the drop down option. You can upload files if you want, which I haven't done a ton, but I've done a little bit. You also have a linear scale that you can use. You also can do multiple choice grids, multiple checkbox grid, date or time. So those are the things that you can use in the types of questions that you can use. But the other thing that you'll notice as I mouse around, I end up with the option to, oh, what does this mean? I can insert an image. And so I can go out and search on the internet for a picture, or I can upload something from my computer. So this is another way if you're trying to translate your PDF worksheets into an online something, you can start using images. So we know how to make snips to use this. I can also use images for my answers. And so the cool thing here is for like elementary, I can use a lot of picture options rather than having to use the words and be able to make it more accessible. So we'll do the standard math question. And it does give some suggestions, and so it tells me, gives me some options. And now I'm going to deal with the answer key. So I'm going down to the answer key. I need to select the correct answers. So it tells me to choose the correct answer. And so I can choose as many answers as I want to be correct. But in this situation, we know that that's the only correct answer. I can give it points. I can also add incorrect answer feedback and correct answer feedback. I can also embed a link or a YouTube. And so the only videos that I can embed are YouTube videos. But if I want to give students feedback and say, you know, here's a video to review, or here's, you know, go back and review this section, you can do that. You can also do a video and a link for the correct answer. And so if you want to, you know, do a celebration or just give them, you know, good job, you can do that also. So that's your feedback. So once I'm done with my answer side, I can click on done and it takes me back to my question. So now you're going to see that my answer key, I have 5 points there. And so if I need to go back and edit my answer key, I just have to click on that. I do kind of tend to think of the quizzes as like a flashcard or something where you have a front side and a back side. So you have the question side and then you have the answer side. So just so you know, that's how each question will have its own setup like that. So as we scroll on over, I can duplicate these questions, which is really nice because if I've done a lot of setup and I want to be able to reuse some of that, I can just duplicate it. I can delete it. I can also make things required. I tend to make, like this would be something I would make be required. If I asked something like, tell me a little bit more about XYZ, you know, like let me know if you have any other questions, that would be something that I would not make be required, just because then people don't have to do that. I also have an option here I can show a description, and so maybe I want to add a little bit more detail. I can go to a section based on an answer, and this is where I was talking about your logic. And I can also shuffle the option order. And so while I'm not shuffling the questions, I can shuffle the order that the options show up in. So that is essentially a question. And so they're all very, you know, have the same structure. On the left, on the right, you're going to notice that we have this floating toolbar that goes up and down. That is our what's next. So you can add another question. So if I click on that, it adds a question below my first question. And here's the cool thing. I can import questions. Did you guys know you could import questions? Um, Yeah, so Stacy, you asked about when you copy a form, do your settings stay as you save them? So yeah, so like if you set a form up so that you know you do not have to be outside K-12 and that students can you know, go back and edit or whatever, yes. Is there an option for matching? Well, so you could match in this, I mean, there is no drag and drop, but you could use the images and go that route. So not technically matching, but kind of matching. So did you guys know there is a option to bring in questions from other quizzes? That is so cool. So when we're on our, I'm going to cancel this again. When we're on the bar here, we have import questions. And so now I can go out and it is going to show me the forms that I have for this account. And so I'm going to grab this one because it has some cool apples on it. I'm going to say select. And at that point, it pulls up just the questions. And so I can just see that I have what questions I want to bring in. And so I will bring in my 3 questions and call it good. And so here, it brought in questions for me from another form, which I really love because it makes it easier to not have to recreate the wheel. So in terms of like your matching question, Carol, so here I can go in and I could edit and I could add in images. And I could find the number of apples, or do something like that, and I could actually bring in apples so that the students would be able to match like that. So you can work around it, and I'll have to do some looking to see if I can find some examples of that, because that is a great question. So the questions that I brought in, this one is just an image, and so I'll show you guys that here in a second. I brought in a multiple choice question, and everything that I had set up with it is still there. So if I look at the answer key, I can go in and make sure that I have the right answer, the number of points, done, it's still required, what's the capital of South Dakota, like this, okay, that one's required. And then here's the question that I was working on before. So you have all of these different things. I can also add a title and description. And so this is something that I've used a lot when I do sections and I have different things that I want students to look at. I can add an image, which is what we have done right here, because when this quiz was created, you couldn't add images in here. So now I could add that image in right there, and I wouldn't have to have the separate section. I can add in a video. Remember, it is only YouTube, and so I don't have the ability to bring in something else. And then finally, I can add a section. And the sections give me that opportunity to the sections give me that opportunity to have students to add in logic. And so I can say, if you answer, pick this answer, then you're going to go here. If you pick this answer, you're going to go there. I can also just keep students from seeing all the questions at once. And so if I insert a section, so here I have a section at the end, and I can drag a question under it here. So now, and when I look at my preview, it's going to show me all of these questions, but to see that last question, I would have to click on next, but I have to answer everything. That's the worst part about having things be required. All right, so now I see the question that I've thrown in. And so you can really you can have a section, for every question if you wanted to, just to kind of keep the kids, and because if you set them up to be required, they would have to answer that question before they could move on. So you have a lot of options here for doing stuff with your quizzes. So Nicole asked a great question about, does it have to be in Google first, or can we grab it from a math worksheet? So it really depends on, all right, so you shared a form with me, but I need to be in K-12, but I'll just copy it and drag it in. That's okay. So I don't know that I understand your question for sure. Does it have to be in Google, or can we grab it from a math worksheet? A picture? That is a very cool form. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so if we do a picture, um, you can do a couple of different things. One of them is we can go in and remember yesterday I had that worksheet that I had on my camera on my and that I took the snip of. So it's saved in my downloads. I can grab that and bring it in. And so here I have my practice worksheet that's in. In this situation, I really would consider making it, I mean, I can make it bigger, but it's pretty unwieldy. I would probably consider doing snips of it and taking smaller images and bringing those in. And so question 1 and then question 2 type of thing. But yes, so you can bring in an image. It doesn't have to be something that's on your computer. It can be something, or it has to be on your computer, but it doesn't have to be in your Google Drive. So does that answer that question? Awesome. Okay. So forms, life-changing and so much fun. So what we'll do next is I'm going to take and kind of, well, actually, I want you to have your form done, and then we'll come back. So go ahead. There's already 24 class comments. So that means there's 24 forms that are created. So 2 things. If you haven't created a form, that's okay. I'm going to give you guys about 10 minutes just to, I mean, seriously, create a simple form. You don't have to do tons of questions, and then share it. So, I mean, it can be the email, it can be the question, 2 plus 2 is 4, the answers, and then share it. So you have that opportunity to test it out. And then what I'm hoping is that your colleagues will go and see what's happening in the class comments and fill out some of those forms so that you can get some responses, and we'll have some responses to play with. So about 10 minutes to hang out with Google Forms. So if you're already done, go look and see what's out there in the comments and fill out some of those forms so that people get responses. And I will be here to answer questions. I don't really want to pick on anybody, but there are some really neat ones in here. So can I pick on you, Melanie or Kara? Do you want to unmute? So what I liked about Melanie and Kara's was they used the templates, and so they just dropped these in, and so super easy to create, and you didn't have to take a lot of time to do it. So I'm glad that you used those. Let's see, there's another really cool one that is it this one? Is it Ross's? Do you want to talk about this one, Ross? This one is I love this one because this is really an important one to, to help our learners think about their learning. And so our learners thinking about his learning, but you also used the scale. And so we're able to, when we get this back as results, you can see the scale there. So that's pretty cool. So thank you, Ross. Does anybody else want to Does anybody want to share theirs? You guys are so quiet today. Okay, sorry, Ross. I get it. I had unstable internet this morning, which was not cool. So a couple of other things I know, and I don't remember who they were. Was it this one? I've already responded. So it was this one. This one was really fun because there was a number, you asked a number of different questions. I also really liked, and so I'm really curious, did you, have you used these before for your Google, for your, with your students to gather information? Because I saw a number of you, Horstman did it, and there was a couple of others that did kind of a let me get to know you type of thing. And so have you used the Google Forms for that before? Nice. These are cool. So lots of really good quizzes. I encourage you guys to look at each other's and just kind of go through, because you may get some ideas of what else you could want to do with your Google Forms. So Google Forms can be life-changing. I really do like them just because I use them for a lot of different things. Rolling on through, we have Google Slides, Collaborate, Create. And this is one where I'm asking you guys to, you've already created yesterday on Google Slides when you made the PDF. And so you've done that Google Slides thing. One of the things, Google Slides can just be so flexible. You can do so many things with Google Slides. And so when we're doing Google Slides, I dropped back in the tutorials, but I also said, you know what, don't recreate the wheel. And so Ditch That Textbook has an amazing collection of Google Slides ideas and resources and templates. And so as you are, starting to do Google Slides, know that you don't have to, recreate the wheel. And if Ditch That Textbook doesn't load, I'm going to be really sad. Let's try it again. He's been hit and miss today. So there are some amazing templates here for Google Slides, and I don't think it's going to load, which makes me really sad. I'm going to, yeah. He is there. I was there this morning, and then I wasn't there. Now I'm not there, and then I was there, and now I'm not there. So that's where we're at. So 25 things you didn't know you could do with Google Slides is from Casey Bell, and this one is a couple years old, but it's still, I mean, it's got good stuff in it. And what I really like is she gives us the links out, and so you can, create an ebook. Do add-ons, you can do icons with the noun project. So all of the different things that you can do here, we can voice type or insert audio. And so this is just one of those like, oh, if I didn't know, I can come here and get some ideas. And then my last example was something I wanted to share with you guys, just so you have it to take and roll. And so this is view only, but you can, so this is an example of a worksheet that we turned into a lesson plan or into an interactive table. And so this is just a table. I just inserted a table here. Here is the slide where you can type your name. This is actually as the background, and so you can go in and edit it there. Here is people discussion, collaborative, and so we did, and this is an example of breakout rooms with 3 people. They analyzed the picture, and our first round, they answered the first 3 questions, the observe, reflect, and question. And then we came back and discussed. They got some more information. They did that further investigation. And then we came back and discussed. And then finally, they were sent back to answer these questions: is what did you learn? How does it compare? And could you use this in your classroom? And this was so the first 2 questions I would use with students. The other one was, it was mainly, is for teachers to kind of think about how could we integrate this into our classroom, and it wasn't. And so that's kind of why that's there. But so there are some examples that you can actually take and use, because inserting a table, having, the room or the group, super easy way to use Google Slides. When I'm making the collaborative slides, I have reached a point where I don't even make them fancy, because you really just want people to focus on answering the questions and interacting and talking with each other. It's not so much that I need to have bells and whistles on them. So one of the things that I would really like you to do is to practice using Google Slides. And I'm going to try ditch that textbook again. I just don't think we're going to get it. Darn it. Because there is just so many templates there. So I'm going to actually give you guys a pass on this. So you do not have to do the Google Slides. I was kind of hoping we could go in and look at some of those templates and give you a chance to look at those and play with them, because they are just amazing, what he's put together, and you don't have to recreate them. So we'll come back to Google Slides. You guys can check it out. It will be there. Okay. So questions on everything we've talked about so far? Anything? Okay. So let's look at assignment 8, which is the rubrics assignment. And you guys are already turning that in 2, so go you guys. So rubrics is something that is really new in Google Classroom. It was in beta until it was launched last summer in beta, and then it was released in early 2020. And so it's one of those things where there isn't a ton out there on using it, and there's also, it's one of those things that it really isn't that hard to do. And so I was really excited to try it out. So I worked with another district, and they used it. So as we look at rubrics, you'll have noticed when we are making an assignment, one of the things we can do is you can add in a rubric. And you can reuse rubrics from other classes. And so once you've made a rubric, you can reuse it. You can also export a rubric. And so I'm looking at my rubric here, and I can click on the 3 dots, and I can export it to Sheets. And so if I wanted to export it out, I can export it to Sheets. And so that allows me to share it with my colleagues. So if, all the English teachers want to use the same rubric, we can do that. We don't have to be recreating the wheel, et cetera, et cetera. And so it went to Sheets, and let's see if we can find it now because it doesn't really tell me where it would go. There it is. And so this now it put it in a sheet. And the reason I know that this was an export is because it comes up with this. It is recommended that you do not edit rubrics in spreadsheet format, which is fine. But so now this is something that I can turn around and I can actually upload into another assignment if I wanted to add that rubric. If I could share it with you guys and you can upload it into an assignment. In fact, I did share it with you guys. You have the copy of the perfect paragraph rubric, and so you can add that if you want to um, an assignment. And I'll show you how to upload a rubric in a second. So when we're using the rubrics, what does this look like? And I'm so excited that some of you have already turned in the work because now it means we can look at what it looks like when people have turned in content. So here, let me save this. And I want to go to the turned in. And I'm going to pretend to grade you, okay? So I'm going to try to pretend to grade you. Oh my word, why won't you go in? My internet is not good today either, you guys. I'm sorry. Okay, here we are. So at this point, once I clicked on it enough, you shouldn't have to click on it that much. I can see it's a 16-point rubric. I can expand the criteria, I can collapse the criteria. So depending on where I'm at, I may know just because I've graded this 500 times, I may know exactly where he is. This is nothing, I mean, you really did fine. I just clicked on numbers here. And so now I can return this assignment to him. And he will have, and I could do comments at the bottom too if I wanted to. So I can add in a comment, please review your grammar. And good. So now I can return this and we've used the rubric. So I've turned it back, and that is how the rubric looks. Well, what does the rubric look from the student side? Well, you guys can see that because you are all in Google Classroom, but I will show you too. So when I look at my rubric assignment here, and I go into view the assignment, I will be able to see at the bottom of all the information, I have the rubric here. I can expand out the criteria and it's going to give me the details for each topic area. So as you're using this can really help you look at using the rubrics and grading. All right. Okay. So questions about rubrics. Is this something you guys think that you will be able to do? Okay, so do you want to spend some time to play around with a rubric, or are you good? Can we look at some other stuff? Go ahead and chat me up or unmute and talk. All right, well, I'm going to move because okay, that's good. I just want to make sure that everybody has seen that because it is new and it's not something, there's not a ton out there. But you do have that sample one, you can build your own, you have options. So let's look at one of my favorite parts of the day, that instructions and routines. How will you help your learners develop the skills to use Google Classroom effectively? And so when we're looking at this content, this is one of those things that um, doing this collaboratively, and I'm not sure where you guys are today, like how many people are in a room, et cetera, et cetera. So I can't, I would put you in breakout rooms, but I'm not sure where people are. There's a ton of different resources to, like, how do you get students to use Google Classroom? What do you do first? What do kids do first? And so we pulled together a number of resources on using Google Classroom. And so this Parent's Guide to Google Classroom is one that a number of, I think it was created last spring, and I think everybody has used this Parent's Guide to Google Classroom and modified it. And so this is one of those things where it's view only. Make a copy of it, and then you can customize this. So you would want to change your student ID to something that, it'd be at k12.sd.us. You would potentially want to change what other icons, or what is relevant. The only other thing that you would really want to change, I think, is like the email, who to contact, and be able to add that in. So if this was something you liked, you could take this, copy it, and turn this into your guide for Google Classroom to help for your parents. Alice Keeler does a really nice job of what do kids do first. And so I really like this because it's kind of like that first day of Google Classroom. And so what are we going to do? And so she has them actually go in and post on the stream, and talks about digital citizenship. She has them ask a question. And then she does an assignment where she gives them the instructions of what to do. And so they're actually doing a simple task in Google Classroom that relates to the curriculum, but really is more in line with teaching them how to use Google Classroom, if that makes sense. And so Alice Keeler does a lot with students creating, and this is where, if you can allow your learners to choose what they want to use, then they're going to take more ownership and have more excitement, and they can use all of the Google resources right within Google Classroom. And so that means you don't have to create templates or graphic organizers for everything, because they'll be able to respond to what they'll be able to create and turn in their work depending, you can say write a paragraph. You don't need to give them a template to write a paragraph. And so then the last thing in this getting started is be consistent. Be consistent about how you distribute directions, the documents and link, and always use Google Classroom to have students turn in their work. And so when we're face-to-face, that might be when they've done something, they click the submit. And I know that was one of the things you guys talked about this spring, was kind of the um, getting students used to that. And that's where that consistency is. It just becomes one of those things that we do. So I really love this article because it does a nice job of giving us some ideas and resources for getting started with your, doing first. Brighton High School has one of the better student learning expectations for Google Classroom. And so I shared this just because, we're trying to pull together, best practices and good examples. And so they have a Google Classroom learning expectations that you can check out. And then we also have some really nice ones for the littles. And so integrating meaningful tech. And so you're looking at Google login and literacy. How do we get kids to be able to log in from anywhere? And this is I believe this is also shared in for littles, the resources for littles, but they do a keyboard template to help the learners start to use their colors to make those decisions. But then here they have information on signing in from your Google account at home. And I love this because it gives you everything that you need, so you can check that out too. So there's that for the little kids. There is a student Google Classroom Start Guide, which is another, and you can actually copy it. And this is something that you can give out to your students if you want. So you can customize that to get started. And then there's the quick start, which has some images, and then more on the colored tape. So I'm going to give you guys about 10 minutes to just kind of explore these. And in the class comments for this, go ahead and talk about how, what resource you think you want to use to, share your first day expectations. But the other thing to do here is, in your groups, is this something where you want to get together and create the parents guide to Google Classroom, create the Google Classroom what do kids do first, and so that all the kids are seeing the same thing and you're not having to each create something different. So go ahead and take about 10 minutes and explore that, and I will be here to answer any questions or if you have anything you need. Okay, I've got one quick comment in there about the quick guide to Google Classroom. So do either unmute and talk, or else in the chat. I'm curious what you guys would like to do with helping your students as we move into Google Classroom in the fall. How you want to do that. Oh, good. Yes, the visuals are really great on the parents guide. I love that, Melanie. In fact, and we just one of my coworkers just made one last night. I will share it in the um, discussion. I'm not sure if he's done with it or not, but he was drafting it up, and it's so I can share that one too, so you can look at that one. But cool, that will be really nice. Oh, good. So these are things that I hear a lot. I mean, this is probably one of the second. So we have PDFs is like number one, and number two is how do we, how do we get using Google Classroom and everything. So I'm glad you guys were able to take a few minutes to look at that. So, um, the next thing that I want to do is I really want to give you guys a little bit of time to do some building, exploring the content area specific. I know I have some questions from the library, and if I have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But I really want to kind of give you guys a few minutes to do some creation. We'll also do a real quick check and see if our slides is back. Ah, it is. He's just up and down today. So that if we go back to slides and look at that, you're going to see so many different ideas. And he gives us free Google Slides templates. And so you can do this or that Snapchat game, would you rather, Instagram stories, um, choice stories, interactive notebooks, blackout poetry. And so just a ton of different resources that you can use. And then you'll see here that there is Paula Martinez, the Slides Mania gal. She also has resources. So definitely, and here's one for ditching that textbook in K-12 or in K2. So this ultimate slides teacher resource guide is worth exploring. And so I'm going to throw you into that. So sorry, I was going to give you time, but now I'm going to say go to that. So when we're in our assignments, 007, Google Slides, collaborate, create, click on the attachment, and then we're going to click on the interactive Ultimate Google Slides teacher resources from Ditch That Textbook. And then as you scroll on down, you're going to see all these different options. We're going to look at the Google Slides templates. So there's a ton there. But then as we go all the way down to the bottom, then you're going to see even more. And this is where we have 20 ways to ditch that textbook in K2. So you have templates, and these are really fun. Those are really, really good ones. So definitely take a few minutes and do that. So I'll give you guys about 10 minutes to explore slides now, just because I do think it's really important that you have that time to look at all these and kind of brainstorm before we get going into the year, when I know I'll always say I'm going to go back and look at things, but yeah, it doesn't happen like it should. Oh, Mark, I love that question, and ish, yes. So while everybody else is working, I will hang out with you for a second. So let's go back to our Google Classroom, and let's go up to the 010 assignment, and I've dumped in a number of resources here for CTE and STEM. And so let's see. Let's do the CTE Wakelet. Okay. There's a ton of stuff for FFA. I want to find the Wisconsin one. So there's this learning objects from Wisconsin. Have you looked at this?
No.
You talked to me. Thank you. I love it. So this learning objects from Wisconsin, they have a bunch of interactives, and so if we go in and look, these are all free. These are all things that you can. They were developed. I believe they were developed as part of a grant, and it's super cool. I've played around with it a little bit, but I haven't obviously been able to go through everything. So that's one potential option for you. Let's see what else. So if we go into this, so within the CTE resources, here I have the welding tips and tricks on YouTube, Weld Fever on YouTube, American Wood Shop, are all ones that came recommended like when I think when everybody went off, when we started going online in March, these were things that I kind of curated from people that were using them. The Skills Commons repository, that has an incredible amount of content in it. This was also grant created by all the technical schools, and so you may be able to find content that supports what you're doing. Okay, but this is huge. The Skills Commons repository is huge. So does that make you dangerous?
I'm going to give it a try.
Cool. I can't wait. All right. Well, you know what? I'm here tomorrow, and so if you have other questions or issues, or want some more ideas, let me know. All right. So if you guys don't have any other questions, we'll wrap it up, and we will be back tomorrow for our last day together. If you need anything, shoot me an email. I'm going to look for stuff for Spanish. I'll do a little more digging for English, and give you guys some different resources for Library 2, just in terms of like what it can look like in Google Classroom. For the content areas that I did drop in, math, there is just some really great ideas of using there's the resources for using Jamboard, if you get that turned on, how to teach high school math using Google Classroom and Seesaw. And so while I'm not a huge advocate of let's recreate the wheel and let's use as many apps as we can, it is good to be able to go in and look and see what your options are and be able to check that out. So lots of good examples of using Google Classroom for math, using Google Classroom for the STEM, CTE, FFA peeps. You've got to check that out. Fine arts, cool things, and my favorite cool thing is this. Is it Art at Home? I think it is. I think it's the Art at Home. Has lots of really cool art ideas. And then the music resources, just because I know that, and so the Fine Arts Wakelet is the same, but I also have a number of teachers that have asked a lot of questions when I take the class. And so I've pulled together a number of resources for music teachers. And then finally the littles. So those are all going to be pretty specific, but definitely options for you. So I'll add those, add a couple more things for tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to really be more of a brainstorm share. So come be ready to talk or chat or send me private messages, whatever. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your afternoon, and we'll see you tomorrow.